We standing at your own wedding, smiling in a dress you'd dreamed of since childhood, when suddenly a speech turns into a weapon aimed directly at your heart. Words that should have been about love and laughter nearly destroyed my marriage before it even began. My name is Emily, and this is the story of how one wedding speech almost ended my marriage, and how I fought back from the edge of disaster. When I first met Jacob, I thought he was everything I'd ever wanted. We met at a friend's birthday dinner in Boston. Him, tall and charming, with that easy laugh that made everyone lean in closer. I was working long hours as a nurse back then, exhausted most of the time, and he seemed like this burst of light cutting through the routine of my life. He noticed when I skipped dessert, asked if I was on a diet or just saving room for wine, and when I said I had to work early the next morning, he actually offered to walk me to my car. It was such a small thing, but it felt different. The next few months were a whirlwind, dates that stretched late into the night, flowers on my doorstep after brutal shifts, and the way he told me his mom would love me because I had that family-first energy she always preached about. For a while, it felt like a fairy tale, but looking back now, the red flags were there. I just didn't want to see them. Jacob had this best friend, Mark, loud, brash, always making crude jokes. The kind of guy who thrived on attention, especially if it made someone else look bad. He'd make digs at me like, "Don't let Emily boss you around too much, Jake, or you'll never get out of the house again." Everyone would laugh, and I'd force a smile, but inside it always stung. Jacob would brush it off as Mark just being Mark, but I noticed he never really defended me either. Then there was Jacob's mom, sweet to my face, but sharp underneath. She'd make comments like, "Oh, you're a nurse, not a doctor. That's still nice, though." Or, "Well, as long as Jacob's happy, that's what matters." Little cuts, layered over time. Still, I pushed forward. Because when Jacob proposed after 2 years, under twinkling lights at the Boston Harbor, I didn't think twice. I said yes, and I thought the rest of my life was finally falling into place. What I didn't know then, what no one knew, was that the moment of happily ever after would unravel in front of 100 guests. Right in the middle of my wedding reception, I always thought planning a wedding would be stressful but exciting. For me, it was more like walking a tightrope with everyone shouting directions from below. From the moment Jacob and I announced our engagement, it felt like everyone else had an opinion. His mother wanted the ceremony at their family's country club. My mom wanted it in the church where I grew up. Jacob wanted an open bar. I wanted to stay within a budget that didn't involve taking out a second mortgage. And then there was Mark, the best man. From day one, he treated our wedding like his personal comedy stage. He'd say things like, "Emily, don't worry. I'll make sure Jake doesn't run out the back door before the vows." Or, "Maybe I'll throw in a few ex-girlfriend stories during my toast," just to spice things up. Everyone laughed at his jokes, except me. I'll admit, I wondered if maybe I was being too sensitive. I mean, it was supposed to be our day, right? Maybe I just wasn't the type who could laugh at certain things. But deep down, I had this nagging feeling, like Mark was waiting for the right moment to pull the rug out from under me. Still, I pushed forward. The months blurred with endless fittings, tastings, and fights over seating charts. Jacob was supportive in some ways. He handled the DJ and venue, but when it came to standing up to his mom or keeping Mark in line, he always shrugged it off. "It's not a big deal, babe. They just like to tease. Don't let it get to you." Easy for him to say. He wasn't the one biting her tongue at every gathering. The night before the wedding, during the rehearsal dinner, Mark gave a mini speech after 2 glasses of whiskey. He stood, swaying slightly, and clinked his glass. "To my boy Jacob, the last man standing." I never thought I'd see the day he'd settle down. We all know the stories. This guy was wild back in the day. "Sorry, Emily, but hey, I'm glad you tamed him." The room filled with laughter. My parents looked uncomfortable, but Jacob chuckled and shook his head. I forced a smile, but inside my stomach twisted. I didn't know what stories he was referring to, and frankly, I didn't want to. I remember whispering to Jacob later that night, "Please, tell him to keep it clean tomorrow. I don't want any surprises." Jacob kissed my forehead and said, "Relax. He wouldn't do anything to ruin the day. You worry too much." But Jacob was wrong. So wrong. I woke up to the soft hum of my bridesmaids bustling around the hotel suite. Makeup brushes swept across cheeks, curling irons hissed, and champagne glasses clinked. My dress hung by the window, glowing in the morning sun like a promise. For a few hours, I let myself believe in the fairy tale again. The ceremony itself was beautiful. My father walked me down the aisle, his eyes misty with pride. Jacob looked nervous but handsome in his suit, and when he said, "I do," I believed him with all my heart. For that one perfect moment, I forgot about Mark. I forgot about his mother's comments. I forgot about every little red flag. It was only later, after the cake had been cut, the photos taken, and the DJ had people dancing, that the storm came. The reception hall glittered with string lights and laughter. My bridesmaids were tipsy, my dad was telling stories at the bar, and Jacob's mom was busy gossiping in the corner. For the first time all day, I sat down, heels aching, and took a deep breath. Then came the sound of glass clinking. Mark stood at the head table, whiskey in hand, a smirk spreading across his face. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, "if I could have your attention for just a moment." I felt my stomach drop. Jacob grinned and leaned back in his chair like he'd been waiting for this. I, on the other hand, felt frozen. All the air seemed to drain out of the room as Mark cleared his throat dramatically. I told myself it would be fine. He'd make some crude jokes, maybe embarrass Jacob a little, but nothing more, right? Wrong. Because the words that came out of Mark's mouth didn't just embarrass Jacob. They detonated a bomb that would nearly end my marriage before it even began. Mark raised his glass, the amber liquid catching the glow of the chandeliers. "I've known Jacob since college," he started, his voice booming through the mic, "and let me tell you, this man was not the type anyone expected to settle down." The crowd chuckled politely. My smile tightened. He was the guy who swore he'd never get married, never get tied down. Always chasing fun, always chasing. He paused, smirk widening. Well, let's just say always chasing. A ripple of laughter passed through the guests. Jacob gave an awkward laugh, rubbing the back of his neck. I felt my stomach knot. Mark leaned forward on the mic. "Now don't get me wrong. Emily, you're amazing, beautiful, smart, way out of Jacob's league if you ask me. But hey, miracles happen, right?" More laughter. I wanted to disappear. Then Mark's tone shifted. He swirled the whiskey in his glass and said, "But since we're all among family and friends tonight, I think it's only fair that we acknowledge the real miracle here. That Jacob somehow convinced Emily to marry him before certain details came to light." The room went silent. I froze. Jacob stiffened beside me. Mark grinned, loving the tension. "For example, how many of you know that less than a year ago, Jacob was still hooking up with... Let's see, should I say her name?" He tapped his chin, pretending to think. "Oh, right, Claire. Yeah, Claire, the ex we all thought was long gone." The sound of gasps filled the hall. My heart stopped. Claire. I knew her name. She was Jacob's on-again, off-again girlfriend before me. He'd sworn they'd cut ties completely. My vision blurred. I couldn't breathe. Mark wasn't done. And hey, no judgment, right? Jacob's always been a ladies' man. But honestly, Emily, props to you. Either you're the most forgiving woman alive, or you just didn't know. Until now, the crowd erupted, some with nervous laughter, others with shocked whispers. My mother's hand flew to her mouth. Jacob's mom looked smug, like she wasn't even surprised. I sat there, humiliated, as every eye in the room turned toward me. Jacob grabbed the mic, his face red. "Mark, that's enough," he barked. But the damage was done. Mark raised his hands innocently. "Just being honest, bro. Isn't that what a best man speech is for? To tell the truth?" I stood up. My legs felt like jelly, but I couldn't sit there another second. My dress swished as I pushed past Jacob, past the whispers, past the cameras clicking desperately to catch every second of the drama. By the time I reached the hallway outside, the tears were already spilling down my cheeks. My wedding night had turned into a nightmare. The hallway outside the reception hall was dimly lit, the muffled sound of music and chatter spilling through the closed doors. I clutched the edge of my dress, trying not to collapse under the weight of humiliation. My chest heaved, tears streaking down the makeup I'd spent hours perfecting. "Emily!" Jacob's voice called behind me. Seconds later, he burst through the doors, his tie loosened, panic in his eyes. "Baby, wait!" He reached for me. I flinched back. "Don't touch me!" His hand froze midair, trembling. "It's not what it sounded like." I let out a bitter laugh that caught in my throat. Not what it sounded like? He just announced to everyone that you were sleeping with your ex less than a year ago, on our wedding night. And you want to tell me it's a misunderstanding? Jacob's face flushed, his jaw tightening. Mark was exaggerating. He always does this. He thinks he's funny. Funny? I snapped. My voice echoed down the corridor. Do you think my parents are laughing right now? Do you think my friends, our families, are laughing? They all think I'm some pathetic idiot who married a cheater. Jacob's eyes darted nervously, like he was searching for a lifeline. Emily, I swear it wasn't like that. Claire, she showed up at a party once. I had too much to drink. It was a mistake, but it didn't mean anything. The words hit me like a punch. So it's true, I whispered. My throat burned. You did sleep with her. His silence was the only answer I needed. The door creaked open, and Jacob's mother peeked out, her expression tight. Is everything all right out here? I turned on her, fury surging through me. Do you already know? Did you know your son cheated on me before I married him? Her eyes flickered, guilt flashing before she masked it with calm detachment. Emily, sweetie, it was just a mistake. All men make mistakes. What matters is he chose you. He married you. I stared at her, stunned. Are you kidding me? Jacob hissed. Mom, please. But she held up a hand. No, Jacob. She needs to understand. Marriage isn't about perfection. It's about forgiveness. If you walk away every time a man slips, you'll never stay married. My stomach churned. This was the advice I was supposed to swallow? That I should just look the other way on my wedding night? I pushed past both of them, my heels clicking furiously against the marble floor. I didn't care where I was going. I just knew I couldn't breathe in that hall another second. Later that night. Back in the hotel suite, the silence between Jacob and me was suffocating. I sat at the vanity, wiping away mascara-streaked tears. My dress lay crumpled on the floor, a tragic symbol of everything I'd lost in just a few hours. Jacob stood by the window, staring out at the city lights. His shoulders slumped. I'm sorry, he said quietly. I should have told you. I should have never let it happen. I turned, my voice sharp. You think a sorry fixes this? You humiliated me. You let your best friend humiliate me. You let your mother dismiss me like I was overreacting. How am I supposed to trust you after this? He spun around, desperation etched across his face. Because I love you, Emily, and I chose you. Not Claire, not anyone else. I married you. Tears burned my eyes again, but this time they weren't just from pain. They were from rage. Maybe you did, I said coldly. But after tonight, I'm not sure I chose you. The words hung heavy in the air, a verdict neither of us could escape. The morning after our wedding should have been filled with laughter, room service trays, and the bliss of being newlyweds. Instead, I woke up to my phone buzzing with notifications. My stomach dropped as I scrolled through social media. Photos from the reception had already surfaced. Except they weren't of the cake cutting or our first dance. They were shaky videos of Mark's speech. The captions were brutal. Best man destroys groom in speech, caught cheating before wedding. Bride's reaction says it all. This marriage won't last the honeymoon. I felt sick. Complete strangers were dissecting my humiliation like it was entertainment. Jacob tried to grab the phone. Don't look at that crap. People just want drama. I yanked it back. Drama? You call our lives falling apart drama? He sighed, running his hands over his face. Emily, please. We can move past this. We'll go on the honeymoon, just start fresh, start fresh. The world already saw me as the fool bride who married a cheater. There was no starting fresh. We flew to Hawaii, but it felt more like exile than celebration. The beaches were beautiful, but every time Jacob reached for my hand, I pulled away. Every time he tried to kiss me, I turned my head. One night, over dinner by the ocean, I finally snapped. Tell me the truth, I demanded. How long were you with Claire after we got engaged? Jacob's eyes darted to the waves, avoiding mine. It wasn't serious, just a few times. I didn't know what I wanted then, but I know now. I want you. My chest tightened. Do you even hear yourself? You cheated on me while we were planning a wedding. You let me buy a dress, pick flowers, plan a future, while you were still in her bed. His face crumbled. It was a mistake. I was scared, but I chose you in the end. I laughed bitterly. No, Jacob, you didn't choose me. You settled for me. The rest of the meal was silent. That night, I slept on the couch in our honeymoon suite. The weeks after the honeymoon were hell. Everywhere I went, whispers followed. Guests from the wedding spread the story like wildfire. Friends called, pretending to check in, but I could hear the gossip in their voices. My parents were furious, not just at Jacob, but at me for staying. "You can still annul it," my mother urged. "It's not too late." And I considered it. Oh, I considered it every single night as I lay awake beside the man who'd broken my heart before our marriage even began. But something inside me shifted. I realized divorce wasn't enough. Walking away would leave me broken, humiliated, the punchline of someone else's joke. No, if I was going to walk away, I was going to do it on my terms. I started digging, quietly, carefully. Jacob wasn't as careful with his phone as he thought. Late-night messages to Mark about keeping things quiet. Deleted chats with Claire. Photos hidden in cloud storage. Each discovery hardened me. This wasn't just about a mistake. This was about a pattern. Jacob had thought he could cheat, lie, and hide, and still come out the hero at the altar. But he underestimated me. If Mark's speech nearly ruined me, my own speech would end them. I stopped crying. That was the first step. Grief had consumed me for weeks, but now every tear I shed only felt like a wasted weapon. I needed my strength. I needed clarity. And most of all, I needed patience. Jacob had a habit of leaving his phone on the nightstand while showering. At first I was terrified of looking, but fear quickly turned into fuel. I dug deep. Screenshots, email forwards, cloud backups. What I found made my blood boil. Dozens of flirtatious messages with Claire, Venmo transactions for lunch dates and hotel rooms. And worst of all, a folder in his cloud labeled Work Docs, filled with photos of Claire. He wasn't just unfaithful. He was reckless. I started building a file, password protected, hidden in plain sight on my laptop under the name Tax Documents 2024. Every click, every save, felt like laying bricks in the foundation of my revenge. Mark reaches out. One afternoon, my phone rang. It was Mark, the man who had detonated my wedding with that infamous speech. "Emily," he said, his voice softer than I remembered. "I never wanted to humiliate you. I just couldn't watch Jacob lie to you anymore." For a moment, I almost hated him. But then I realized he was the only one who had the courage to tell me the truth. "What do you want from me, Mark?" I asked. "Nothing, just, if you ever decide to leave him, I'll back you up. I know things. More than I said in that speech." My heart thudded. More? What else did Jacob hide? I didn't let Mark in fully yet, but I filed it away. Allies mattered. The final straw came at Jacob's company dinner. I wasn't supposed to overhear it, but I did. One of his co-workers, a little too tipsy, leaned toward another and said, "Hard to believe he locked her down after everything. Guess she doesn't know half of it." They chuckled. My skin prickled. They knew. They all knew. Jacob hadn't just betrayed me privately. He'd made me into a joke at his office, at his social circles, maybe everywhere he went. That's when my revenge plan crystallized. I didn't want to scream. I didn't want to throw plates or burn clothes on the lawn. No, that was too small for the kind of damage Jacob had caused. I wanted precision. I began planning a dinner, a family and friends event at our home under the guise of celebrating new beginnings. Jacob thought it was my way of moving on. He smiled as he invited his parents, co-workers, even Mark. But what I had in mind wasn't celebration, it was execution. I was going to give a speech, not a teary plea, not a bitter rant. A carefully crafted narrative, backed by undeniable evidence, presented in front of everyone who mattered to him. The same way he and Claire had stripped my dignity bare, I would strip his reputation to the bone. And this time, there would be no coming back. The night of the dinner felt electric. I had spent weeks rehearsing, fine-tuning every word of what I was about to say. My heart was steady, not racing anymore. I wasn't nervous. I wasn't broken. I was ready. The stage is set. The house buzzed with conversation. Wine glasses clinked, forks scraped over plates. Jacob was in his element, laughing, telling stories, walking from group to group like he was the golden boy again. I looked around the room. His parents, glowing with pride. His co-workers, smirking like they were in on a private joke. My own family, polite but strained, still carrying the scars of the wedding humiliation. And there, quietly sipping a drink in the corner, was Mark. He caught my eyes and gave the smallest nod. The room dimmed as Jacob tapped a glass. "A toast," he announced, grinning. "To new beginnings." To us, everyone cheered. I stood. "Actually," I said, my voice clear and calm, "I'd like to make a toast too." At first, I spoke sweetly. I thanked everyone for being there, for supporting us, for believing in love. Then I took a breath, straightened my back, and shifted my tone. "But love," I said, "is only real when there's truth. And tonight I think it's time truth joined the table." The room hushed. I pulled a small remote from my pocket and clicked. The projector screen I had set up earlier, under the excuse of sharing wedding photos, lit up. But instead of wedding photos, a screenshot appeared, Jacob's text to Claire. "Can't wait to see you tonight. She'll never know." Gasps rippled across the room. Click, another screenshot. Benmo, Hotel Bill click, a photo. Claire, smiling in a hotel mirror. Jacob's reflection behind her. The room erupted in whispers, shocked faces. Jacob's parents frozen like statues. I looked at Jacob, his face drained of color. "While I was planning our vows," I said, my voice steady, "you were planning rendezvous. While I was dreaming of forever, you were paying for hotel rooms. While I thought we were partners, you turned me into a fool in front of your friends. Your co-workers, maybe the whole world." I let the silence stretch. "Tonight isn't about saving this marriage," I continued. "It's about reclaiming my dignity and making sure everyone here knows exactly who you are." Jacob shot up from his chair. "Emily, enough! We can talk about this privately." "Privately?" I snapped. "You didn't keep it private when you humiliated me at our wedding. You didn't keep it private when you let your co-workers mock me behind my back. Why should I protect your secrets now?" Gasps, murmurs. His mother buried her face in her hands. One of his co-workers actually slipped out the back door. And then, the final blow. "Claire," I said, turning to the door, because yes, she was there too. I had invited her. The room turned as Claire stepped forward, wide-eyed, caught in the trap. "Why don't you tell them yourself?" I asked. Claire stammered, looked at Jacob, then at me. For the first time, Jacob had no words, no charm, no lies left. The silence that followed was louder than any shouting match. I set down the remote, raised my glass and said, "Here's to new beginnings, mine." And with that, I left the table. Behind me, voices collided, his parents demanding answers, Mark calmly explaining details, my family rising to follow me out. But Jacob? Jacob just stood there, crumbling under the weight of exposure. And for the first time in a long time, I felt free. The night after the dinner, I barely slept, but not because of regret. For the first time in months, I felt light, free, like I had dropped 1,000 pounds I'd been carrying on my shoulders. But Jacob? His world was about to collapse. By morning, the fallout had spread. His mother called me first, sobbing apologies. "We didn't know, Emily. If we had known—" Her voice broke. I didn't comfort her. I wasn't responsible for her son's choices. His co-workers? They stopped returning his calls. By lunchtime, I heard whispers that HR was reviewing some of his expense reports. Turns out, hotel rooms charged to his corporate card weren't just my problem anymore. And Claire? She disappeared. Deleted social media, ignored his texts, ghosted him completely. She hadn't signed up for public exposure. Jacob tried to reach me. Calls, texts, even showing up at my apartment door. I ignored him. Every message grew more desperate. "We can fix this. Please don't ruin me like this. You don't understand. It was just a phase." A phase. Years of lies and betrayal were a phase. I filed for divorce the next week. Swift, clean, merciless. My lawyer, God bless her, was a shark. She had copies of every screenshot, every transaction, every photo. Jacob couldn't fight it. The judge's face tightened when the evidence appeared. "Mr. Parker, it seems this marriage was compromised from the very beginning." I was awarded the apartment, most of the savings, and legal fees. Jacob left with nothing but debt and a soiled reputation. The story of the dinner spread like wildfire, not because I shared it, but because people love gossip. By the end of the month, Jacob was a ghost in our social circle. Friends avoided him. His family tiptoed around him. His co-workers mocked him behind closed doors. The golden boy image was shattered, and he had no one to blame but himself. I thought revenge would feel like fire. Instead, it felt like cool water washing me clean. The truth was out. My dignity restored, but I wasn't naive. Healing would take time. Trust would take longer. Still, for the first time in a long time, when I looked in the mirror, I didn't see a broken bride. I saw a woman who had fought her way back, and won. 6 months later, I was sitting at my favorite cafe, sipping coffee, when I realized something. I was smiling, genuinely smiling, without forcing it. No weight on my chest, no gnawing doubt in my stomach, just peace. Life didn't magically become perfect after Jacob. Bills still came, work was still stressful, and dating? I wasn't even ready, but every day I felt stronger. I redecorated my apartment. I went back to painting, something I had abandoned while drowning in Jacob's chaos. I reconnected with friends I had pushed away during the marriage. Most importantly, I learned to enjoy my own company. One evening at the grocery store, I saw him. He looked older, thinner, exhausted. His eyes darted when he spotted me, shame heavy in his posture. For a moment, I almost felt pity. Almost. "Emily," he muttered, voice cracking. Can we talk?" I shook my head gently. "There's nothing left to say." And I walked away, leaving him in the frozen foods aisle, a man frozen in his own mistakes. People often ask me if I regret how it all unfolded. The wedding speech, the humiliation, the public exposure. The truth is, no. That speech may have almost ended my marriage before it began, but in reality, it saved me years of deeper heartbreak. It pulled the mask off a man who never deserved me, and my revenge. It wasn't just about destroying Jacob. It was about reclaiming myself. If there's one thing I've learned, it's this. Silence protects the liar, but truth frees the betrayed. I thought my story would end at the altar, with vows of forever. Instead, it ended in a courtroom, with signatures on divorce papers. But that wasn't tragedy. That was liberation. Final words. So here I am, stronger, wiser, and unapologetically myself. My name is Emily, and this is the story of how my wedding speech almost ended in divorce. But instead, it gave me back my life.